Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm wearing a disco shirt for you.
Oh,
Over
I
here.
like it. It's silver. It's a good look.
Yeah. So I am with Cassandra Nostalgia. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Very mysterious. I'm going to be actually taping myself, but she chose to uh, just do audio, which I like her style, and not video in this Zoom. I've never done this before. So I have, can you see, you could see me obviously, correct?
I can. I'm watching you.
With my 70s disco. Do you see what I put back here for you? The photo of yourself?
Yes, it's very nicely done. It's very professional.
I don't know. And then I got this one too, my dear, because I know you're involved with John Wick. Look at this one. I thought was crazy. 1 second here.
Mm-hmm.
Ready? I was going to stick my head in like this the whole time.
This is very high tech. What are you using? This is just Zoom options?
Yeah, this is just choose a virtual background. I have all different photos that I take myself. I usually use, like I was thinking of using Venice for you because I know you're a California girl, right?
That I am, yeah.
Yeah, so I can do Malibu, for instance, or I can do whatever the hell you want.
I don't know if that's my vibe.
Yeah, so I'm going with your vibe. You're better to look at on both ends than me with a bunch of guns pointing at my head. So yeah, you are one of the my coolest LinkedIn friends, coolest chicks I've ever seen. So that's why I literally had to have you on this podcast.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's kind of jump into this. I'm going to read this, and I normally don't do this, but I'm going to make sure I get everything correct with you because you've done some amazing things, you know, after I researched you and after we connected. But first of all, you're internationally renowned as a business coach, board certified hypnotherapist, correct? And obviously a performing artist. What's amazing I found about you is, you know, you're an independent music artist. And according to this, you managed to accumulate like over 13 million streams on Spotify, over 10 million views on YouTube. You've written for motion pictures, television, and you're an independent label, correct? Okay, I need to figure out how you pulled that off because I grew up in the music industry to a certain degree. My father was a professional drummer. He even designed his own drums, DW drums, left-handed. They were in Drummer magazine. So I grew up with a father that was obsessed with music. I was at a very young age, got to see a lot of groups from James Brown, Frank Sinatra. I've seen Carole King. I've seen Elton John. I've seen literally hundreds of acts. I saw like even people in their infancy, Prince when he was a nobody, Madonna. I mean, just I could list literally hundreds of bands that I was able to see throughout my life. But what you have done, especially in this day and age, I think is remarkable. And let's also mention, and then I'm going to let you talk. I've talked enough. You know, you were in John Wick 2, correct? Not only a couple of your songs, right? You also were in the film in itself.
Yeah, I did music for the first film, and then the second one I was also in the film and wrote music for the film. Yeah.
That's great. See, I didn't mean to screw that up. So I like to get origin stories first. So I knew you were Russian, right? First of all, but you were born in this country, correct?
I was, yeah.
Okay. And what other nationality were you?
Persian, Armenian.
That's interesting. So did you grow up in the LA area or are you just from California in itself?
I grew up in Moore Park. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like a very small little place in Ventura.
Yeah, I used to live in Carlsbad for 6 years. So I spent a lot of time, obviously, in Southern California, but all over California. So let's kind of get into this with you. You also play the piano, correct? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I play quite a few instruments.
Yeah. So did you grow up in a musical household?
No, my mother's brother was a very popular musician in Iran. He wrote and toured for Gugush, which is a really like a pop star in Iran, and Daryush. But other than him, and he passed away when I was very young. other than him, there was really no music background in the family, no artists or anything like that.
Now, you have a very unique look. Did you ever do modeling or anything related to fashion? Because it seems like not only is your music very unique, but your style is very
Mm.
unique as well. Am I off base with that, or?
No, that's very kind. When I was younger, yes, but I really did not enjoy it at all. It's not particularly a passion of mine.
Right, but you can almost tell from a photogenic point of view or whatever, you know how to do a lot of things, especially as far
Mm.
as taking pictures and even the way you market yourself and your brand. It
Mm.
looks very couture. Am I
Mm.
wrong? Right?
Thank you. Thank
What,
you.
wouldn't
Yeah.
you say? I mean, that's kind of to a certain degree, kind of where you're at with that.
I'm very particular with my aesthetic.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you do music in high school, or is this something that really took off later, or?
Later, I was very, very quiet in high school. Had no idea that I could sing or anything like that. I was a dancer, but not much for opening up my mouth and speaking. So that didn't come around until I was in my 20s.
Gotcha. That's
Mhm.
very interesting. At that point, were you thinking of music, or were you thinking of acting, or just performing on stage, doing dance, incorporating music into it?
I just knew that I had a lot going on internally that I had to somehow formulate a way to get it out, and I wasn't quite sure what the medium was going to be. I just knew there was going to be one that I would land on, and it wasn't until I was homeless that I was living in this piano room and started dabbling in music and writing songs that I found I could even sing.
That's unbelievable.
Mm.
When you're saying homeless, are you talking downtown LA area? Is that where you were located?
No, at the time I was going between CSUN, Northridge, and Moore Park.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
This is an amazing story. I mean, the more I talk to you, the more you kind of blow me away. So
Mm.
you're homeless, you start studying. Are you writing your own music here? Are you just learning how to play the piano? What's like, I mean, if I'm homeless, I'm just thinking
Mhm.
about how I'm going to get my next meal. I'm not going to lie, right? I've never been in that situation. So I can't, I love being creative, right? And
Yeah.
I'll just give you my perspective. I've hit the wall sometimes in my life financially, like a lot of people have, especially creating all the time. I've made films, I've done books, and all these things. But
Right.
when things go hard on me, I get very aggravated and angry.
Mhm.
I find it really amazing artists like yourself can
Mm.
be going through such a dilemma and pull out of it in such a positive way, because I don't know if it's my Italian background or whatever it is. I almost want to, I'm not saying get nuts and go violent, but
Mhm.
I want to attack to survive. It's a surviving mechanism, I think, that happens to me, regardless what happens. I always say when you're backed against the wall, that's truly sometimes who you are.
Mhm.
You're backed against the wall and you're homeless. How are you in that mindset? I get you have a lot of time, maybe, if you're not
Mhm.
working. I don't know if you were or weren't, but
Mhm.
how do you fight through that to be so creative?
Well, one, I was really young, so I didn't really know any better. When you're in your very early 20s, you don't really think about, okay, what's going to come next. And so I also just had the second that my fingers touched the piano and I started kind of putting my words to the music, I knew that I was going to find a way to make money. I think for me, money always seemed and still seems um, like it, and this is a privileged perspective for sure, and it really depends on where you are in the world, who you are, etc. But for me, in a privileged way, money didn't seem like something that I couldn't create for myself. I knew that I would be able to figure out loopholes should I need to, should I want to. So I wasn't particularly scared about that. And when I started writing music, I just knew that it was going to create sustenance somehow.
So if you're playing the piano and you're homeless, do you have, because I find it amazing, a lot of homeless people, I see them, you know, you have a certain amount of possessions, and if you're homeless, you're usually always on the go. Did you have paper? Were you writing things, putting it on a phone? How did you save your music so you were able to, you know, obviously master it or eventually perform it? Or were you just doing everything memorization?
At the time, it was primarily memorization, but I did have a phone, and I can't really remember if I was recording into my phone or not. I'm pretty sure it was just memorization and just, you know, I had nothing better to do, so I would just repeat the same song over and over and over. And I was so moved by the fact that I was even writing these things that I wanted to play it over and over until I just remembered it by heart.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And I mean, were you, I don't know how personal I want to get, but was drugs involved in any of this or any of that? Or were you just ended up on hard times just because financially you just hit the wall? I think a lot of people don't realize it is very hard to survive in Los Angeles, especially from a
Mm.
creative standpoint, the expense of it.
Hmm.
And you hear stories like yourself of young women that go out and try to make it and obviously end up homeless, right? You hear it all the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
Was drugs involved, or were you just hitting hard times and you just were very creative and it just, you almost found yourself being homeless, and that made you kind of, I guess, being homeless, you discovered who you were, I'm sorry.
Mm. Um, Drugs were not involved. No, drugs had nothing to do with it at the time. I don't even know that I had even tried a single drug. But no, I was kicked out of my house. It was very difficult for my family, just me in general, and who I was and how different I was from the rest of the dynamic of the family was really difficult. So I was kicked out, and I couldn't keep a job to save my life. You know, I worked as a barista, and I couldn't figure out how to make a cappuccino. And you know, just like the day-to-day living was not something that I was particularly good at. I was good at big picture and kind of visionary things. And so you know, having a regular job was just not going to happen, and still hasn't to this day.
Right. No, I think a lot of artists go through that. Let's call it for what it is. Structured a certain way
Yeah.
from 9 to 5, or you have to deal with these certain situations. It's corporate, the way you have
Right.
to behave in these environments, the people you have to deal with. You just don't fit in, right?
Right. Right.
No, I get it. I get it 100%. So let's jump out of that. I don't want to
Yeah.
get too nuts with the homeless stuff. And let's move forward then. So where do you go from, how did you not become homeless anymore? How did that even happen?
I started writing songs in that piano room, and about a couple of months later, I decided I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I posted an ad on Craigslist. I knew that I needed someone with more of a musical background to work with, and so I posted an ad on Craigslist. No photo, no music, just said exactly what I was looking for, and got a lot of responses back, surprisingly. And one of them happened to be my 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 bandmate, who is still my bandmate today, Roy Gnan.
Mhm.
And we wrote a song together over the internet, and then we ended up meeting in person. Shortly after that, we started playing shows, and we ended up landing agents at William Morris. So it kind of took off pretty quickly.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a success story and a half. I mean, that's what you did, though, is like what a lot of people dream to do, wouldn't you say, to a certain degree?
Explain, what do you mean?
Like a lot of people wish they can kind of catch that break, especially with William Morris. I mean, you know as well as I
Mm,
do, you have musicians that can perform their entire life and never get that break. And
right,
then you do hear of people like yourself where they go from, who else did that? Linkin Park, the lead singer. He literally, I think, I may be wrong, but he went from really hard times, and before you know it, he signed a label, and now
right,
he's performing in front of X amount of people. It's an amazing,
mm,
you know, the entertainment industry, as you know, there are no rules,
right,
right? You
right.
don't,
Yeah,
it's just, it's just always ongoing. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know why some artists make it and some don't, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
You had to stand out, obviously, though.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, when you're doing what you're doing. So what I found interesting too is, so I had to put this. So were these the songs that ended up in John Wick 1 and 2, like you said? Is this how this all came to be because of William Morris putting you in front of the
No,
studio? No?
no. We had done a record called Chrysalis, and then shortly after that, became I met someone, the composer, a very well-known composer. His name is Tyler Bates, and we became friends. And he's done things like Guardians of the Galaxy and 300 and all of that. He did all the music for all of these big films. And he introduced me to Chad, the director of John Wick, and Chad was very interested in me being a part of the films. And so I think I had to write the vocals for those songs in like very, very short amount of time. With the second one, I was finishing the recording of the vocals 5 minutes before I had to hop on a plane to go travel to Italy to film the whole thing. So it was definitely a bit of a whirlwind.
From the time of being homeless to that point, how long is this?
Probably about to John Wick, you mean?
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 years.
Interesting. When you were creating your own music, were you looking at conforming into anything and saying, hey, I eventually want to be signed by this label or that label, or were you just thinking independent?
Um, uh, Really, I love the word loophole. And the reason I love the word loophole is because to me it equates to freedom, and it also says possibility. I'm a big believer in finding the loopholes and possibilities within the construct of an industry that I think overall is kind of falling apart.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to find the through line that would allow me to create freely as an artist without having to sell my soul or get shelved, and still provide sustenance for myself in a way that was meaningful and reach an audience. And so that was really ultimately always my goal and our goal. And so I really remained focused on being able to find sources of money that didn't tie me up in a way that would mean I'm shackled to something that brings me misery.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of times when I was even making my own independent films, like 20 years ago, a lot of it was to create independent films, but eventually to make a Hollywood studio film, especially back then, because we didn't have what we have now as far as being able to market your own shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what I found out about myself is, like, after making a couple films and even co-producing a third and then trying to do something like a much bigger budgeted film, raising a lot of money, trying to cast certain type of actors, could be A and B list, that I wasn't that person.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I thought I was setting out to do was, I'm all about freedom and independence.
Mm-hmm.
Even writing my books, anything I do, I don't care if it's a
Mm-hmm.
podcast, it's almost self-centered reasons. I do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't always, I think one of the weaknesses I have is I don't do it for money, when probably a lot of times I should look and structure it that way. But
Mm-hmm.
I just love, for instance, meeting someone like you, interviewing them, or I love, just doing YouTube videos, whatever I feel. It's almost like I have a release. I have to release this. And when I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking of dealing with anyone else, there is a control aspect. And once somebody I think has any control on me, I almost freak out and I want to tell them to go fuck themselves. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Pardon my
Yes, I
language, but
do.
yeah, from a creative standpoint, I don't care if it's 80-20. It's like,
Right.
if someone's like, Rich, just cut a deal where I don't care if it's a publisher. I don't care what it is. It's
Yeah,
like saying somebody owns 20% of my body and I can't control the whole body. It doesn't work for me.
absolutely.
Do you feel like that sometimes, or that's,
All the time. All
yeah,
the time. And I think once you realize that about yourself, if you don't do something about it and make sure that you align your life with that intention, then you will create a life that you don't want to live in. And I think that's what a lot of artists do. A lot of these, big pop stars, they think that that's what they want and that it's going to bring them some kind of joy. And then they get there and they realize that the void still exists. And that's the problem for artists, is that we kind of exist with that void. A lot of us have experienced a lot of trauma, and so we're always looking to fill it, but it can't quite be filled by external things.
Absolutely. I hang out with two musicians in LA. They're designers as well. They're the Mozart twins. Well, they used to be. They separated. One's a professional violinist, Sheena and Laura, and they're incredible musicians, and they work so hard. And, we discuss things all the time, and I used to know a lot of people, and they're always like, Rich, especially Sheena, who I hang out with, she's like, Rich, should I try this or do this? I'm like, just keep doing what you want to do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Create what you want to create. And truthfully, if people like it and you're happy doing it, eventually it's going to come to fruition. You know what I mean? Or what is that the right word? Fruition? Is that the word?
Fruition.
Yeah. But if you keep constructing or thinking about maybe doing it this way or that way, which I understand a lot of times people, they may want to make more money or try something new. I'm all about that. But I wouldn't change for the sake of changing regarding anything, because it's the journey along the way, I believe. Creating anything is the journey, and it's not just about the end product. It's who I became during the journey, what I went through, who I met, who I created with. It's all these different components. That's just my crazy perspective. So
No, I agree.
Let's get back to you now, because I want to jump on this with you, because this is crazy what you ended up doing as an independent. How did you accumulate 13 million, streams on Spotify? How did you do that?
I did exactly what you just suggested.
Oh, really?
I just stayed true to myself and kept creating things that I felt were authentic, and people happened to respond to the authenticity. And I think for me, I don't feel like I'm creating something great unless there's the polarizing feeling and response from people that they either love it or hate it. For me, I don't really particularly enjoy the word like, or the neutral nature of like. And so I just wanted to continue creating things that really polarized and separated people between, whether they really love it or they really just weren't interested. And I think we have continued to manage to do that. And the ones that really, really like it, well, they really, really share it. And then also, film and TV definitely brings an audience, and so does touring.
Do you think your look helped you out a lot, or do you think it was more music driven? What do you because obviously, like I said earlier, with your YouTube, that's, what did you end up getting over there? 10 million views on YouTube. You got to come in from both directions. So I think that's great, where sometimes you do think like people, musicians, or it could be actors or whatever, they're kind of getting by on their looks, right? To a certain degree. What did you kind of go through regarding that? Did your music get more discovered first? Did you your look get more discovered, or was it just kind of both of them coming together?
I really don't think that you can separate the two when it comes to music like ours. I'm sure that having 40 feet of hair doesn't hurt, being super tall doesn't hurt. All those things, reflect the music in a certain way, and it all goes together. And I'm sure the mysticism and mystique of it is just kind of, and added to it all. So it's the whole thing, the whole package, as they say. But I really dream and will eventually be completely faceless, as we're doing in this conversation, because for me, as much as it might seem like, and I do pay quite a bit of attention to my aesthetic, but I do that for me. I don't do it for anybody else. And so really, I actually like to kind of exist in the shadows and put my art forward rather than my face and my identity.
So then let's jump into the hypnosis type of stuff, and you being, you know, like we were discussing earlier, like a business coach, you know, what's, how does that kind of fall into this category with you? That seems so, but I guess I kind of fall into weird categories as well. That's why when we connected, I was kind of like, this is, you're unique, but you know, the reality is you're unique. There's tons of people in LA that are unique, right? Let's call it for what it is. All over the world, there's a ton of people that are unique. But when it comes to you with kind of what you're doing, it's quite interesting. So with the hypnosis and being a business coach, how do you, because it's like both of us sound like we don't like to be bogged down with any bullshit except our own, right? For the most part. But at the same time, we want to help people kind of in the same point, right? You ever feel like that? So I'm not, so I'm like, don't tell me what I got to do. I'm going to tell you what you should do. Kind of one of those things. You ever feel like that? I always say that. Yeah, don't tell me. You know what I mean? I know what I got to do. You don't know what you're doing. That's what, like one of those conversations. Do you find yourself like that as well, kind
of? Must I out myself? Sure. No. Well, look, I'm good at it. I'm good at being direct, and I'm good at being a director. Even all the visuals of our music videos, photos, all of the designs for our albums, all of that came down to me. I have a very clear direction. So when it comes to branding and things like that, I know what I'm doing. So yeah, it's pretty easy for me to help other healers, hypnotherapists, and things of that nature as a business coach. Now, when I say I'm a business coach, I don't mean I'm a business coach in general. I do business coaching for other coaches, hypnotherapists, and healers that are wanting to grow their business.
Gotcha. That's an interesting perspective. Tell me a little more about how you got involved with that hypnotherapist. Is that what it is? How did did you start this later in life, or was something you were around when you were younger, something that was in the family, a friend introduced you to it? How do people even, I never even understood how people kind of, I could see people getting interested in it, but to go to the level where you're at, how did that even begin?
That began a couple of years ago. I was going through my own healing process and trying to figure out how I was going to heal some of my own really deep core wounds. And I had been going to therapy on and off my whole life with different therapists. And I just didn't find it that effective to just kind of shove yourself in analysis of your past. That's great if you're not analytical yourself. But if you are analytical and you've already done a ton of that, then it just kind of makes you worse off than before, especially if it's repetitive. So I really wanted to find something that was more forward movement, something that takes where you're at in this present moment and helps you get to where it is that you want to go without dwelling so much on the past, because ultimately here we are now in this moment, and what are we going to make of it? And as I was kind of looking for alternative methods for myself, I stumbled on hypnotherapy, and I saw this local college, and even though it was local, I did all the online schooling. And I just got completely fascinated with the subconscious mind. And, at first I thought hypnosis was just kind of a sham. It's like a parlor trick. It's like stage there, theatrics. And as I looked into it more, it became more and more fascinating to me, to the point where I just decided, while we were working on an album, to go to school full time for it. And I was studying something like 10 hours a day I did a year-long course and finished it in like 4 months. And then shortly after that, I created my own hypnotherapy practice, and it launched, and it was so successful. Like, I was having continuous clientele. It was so successful that other hypnotherapists and other coaches started coming to me asking me how they can grow their business as well. And then I started transitioning into that because I was getting so many referrals.
Oh, can you take me on like a little bit of a ride on what the hell goes on when you meet a client and what you kind of go through? Because I was discussing this with my buddies last night. A bunch of us had dinner. A lot of us
Mhm.
worked out our whole life. And I don't know if I mentioned you, but I think I might have. And
Mhm.
my buddy was talking about it as well.
Mhm.
How, where do you, what do you, how do you even go about this? What do you talk about? How do you address this? How do you perform it, I guess?
Are you talking about hypnotherapy or business coaching?
Hypnotherapy. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's okay. So when you say how do you approach it, do you mean the process of hypnosis?
Yeah, I think a lot of us think of hypnosis, like you were saying maybe a little earlier, where there's a guy on the stage and you know what I mean? He takes control over the person and then he makes them do a
Mhm.
bunch of stupid shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So hypnosis in the therapeutic setting has nothing to do with relinquishing control to the hypnotherapist. It's actually a heightened state of self control.
right.
And the trance like state is something that we experience on a daily basis. So, for instance, when you're driving on the freeway and you miss your exit,
Mm-hmm.
you know the habit of driving so well that you can exist in that liminal state to the point where you don't even notice really what's going on.
Hmm.
That's a hypnotic trance. Or
Gotcha.
when, you're falling in love with someone and you only see their eyes and the rest of the world fades away.
Hmm.
That's the hypnotic trance. And it's also the reason why our relationships so profoundly impact us. And we're so highly suggestible to the people that we fall in love with, because they've essentially put us, their love, our love for them, has put us in a trance.
Mm-hmm. I call it a spell. But
A
go ahead.
spell. Yeah, a spell, truly. Um, so, being in that hypnotic state is not unknown to us. Also, 30 minutes before you go to sleep and 30 minutes after you wake up, you're kind of in that hypnotic state. And so what I do is I help people get into that state. And then once they're in that state, then we start working through, whatever it is that they're coming to me for. So whether that's a certain, negative thinking pattern, energetic patterns, bad habits, fears, mental blocks, insecurities, emotional wounds, traumas, addictions, whatever is going on in that sphere, we start to reframe it, reprogram, and rework it.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about last night, the sleeping pattern with that. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like you said, a half an hour before or after, you
Mhm.
know, I traveled so much throughout my life and I love creating and I can sometimes find myself, maybe I don't even know how to explain it, where I'm in that area, it feels like for the entire night, where I don't
Sure.
go deep into sleep, but I'm
Uh-huh.
not also obviously awake, but I'm
Right.
almost in control of my thoughts while I'm sleeping.
Uh-huh.
Would that be a hypnotic kind of, I guess, stage of my sleeping patterns? What is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can do wonderful things with that too. So if you notice that you have control over where your thoughts go in that state, then you should lead them to where you essentially want them to land.
That's where I learn how to create a lot of things. It's almost like I'm a different person or my
Mm,
mind is so open. And I do that a
yeah.
lot on airplanes because, again, like I was saying, I was traveling a lot. But I do it like if I go into a sauna.
Uh-huh.
Meditation, like I was, for years, I was trying to master meditation. Then you finally figure out, oh, I kind of get this. And you can meditate while you're working out. You can meditate during anything you really want to a certain degree. And I
Mhm.
found it quite boring after a while. But mastering my master, like going after this component, that's what we're talking
Mhm.
about last night, where I'm not sleeping, like I said, I'm not awake, but I'm almost enjoying another life within my head. I,
Mhm.
I go do things in there. And I'll wake up with a bunch of different ideas and things that I want to do, or I
Mhm.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Good and bad sometimes. I'm not going to lie about that. And don't get me wrong, I don't
Mm-hmm.
do this all the time, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I can control that. And I think I've mastered that again because of my sleeping patterns, I think, too, because I can sleep for super long periods of times. And then
Mm-hmm.
other times I can, short amount of times, but I almost do that during napping as well a lot. I don't know.
Well, are you talking about lucid dreaming, or are you talking about you're actually still a bit awake? Like, are you in the dream state and you're able to control what's going on inside of the dream state, or is this just before slipping into the dream state?
It's kind of both. I don't know where I'm at sometimes, but I know I'm in control. But I
Huh.
know I'm kind of sleeping, but other times I know I'm kind of awake, if that makes sense. I'm very
Uh-huh.
alert.
Uh-huh.
I don't
Uh-huh.
know. I explained that once to somebody who I know that was involved with the military. And he
Mm-hmm.
said a lot of military guys, obviously they're programmed where they're sleeping, but they know everything that's going on around them. And if there's anything
Right.
that happens, they're kind of right up and ready to go.
Uh-huh.
I can be that person, or I can fall asleep and be dead and not even know what's going on. Like I can,
What changes, what causes you to become more alert in that way of your surroundings?
yeah. So what happens with me is, say I'm going to do something with you, like an interview like in this, if
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'll be like, when I'm going to sleep or getting ready to, let me go through the whole thing in my head a little bit on how I want it to go or
Right. Yeah.
not go. I used to do that a lot with sports. So I literally envision a whole wrestling tournament or a tennis tournament or whatever,
Uh-huh.
the whole thing, then I'd go
Yeah.
and perform it. So I don't know
Yeah.
if
That's hypnosis.
yeah. So
You're basically doing self-hypnosis.
that's what I was going to ask you. My last question: am I self-hypnotic myself? That's where I didn't want to sound like a fool starting off with that. But when I was even traveling, sometimes I'll catch 12, 15 flights, say in a week or something. I'm
Uh-huh.
in my mind, what do I got to do to get to the air? Like I'm setting the pattern up, so it's almost it's almost like I'm both when I'm sleeping or in between sleeping and actually doing it are almost the same. It's almost like I'm living a dream. If that
You're creating the imprint, and so when you live it, it's just it comes with ease.
exactly,
Yeah.
you nailed it. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, all right, all
Mm-hmm.
right. Now you're teaching me here. Let's jump into the business stuff then, because I want to hear about that too. So is your business coaching, what does
Mm-hmm.
that relate to? What is it? Just self therapy to help people? Is it wellness? Is it music? What is that?
So as a business coach, I just help other coaches, therapists, hypnotherapists, and healers start, brand, and grow their business so that they can actualize their professional goals, whatever that might be. So most of the time it's to create sustainable income for themselves. So to create an independent career as a masterful entrepreneur.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool too. You got a bunch of stuff going on. So what's the next move for you? Basically, are you going to keep going after the music angle? Are you going
Uh,
more towards the business and coaching, the
Oh no, I
hypnosis?
will always be an artist at my core. Really, the business coaching kind of fell into my lap, and it allows me to not have to answer to anyone that I don't want to answer to as far as my art goes.
Okay.
So it's creating a sustenance for me that creates really wonderful freedom for me as an artist. Um, but I'm also working on a book as well. Um, so the book is a bit more about the healing arts and that realm of things. And so, yeah, that's what I've been working on too.
Wow, that's awesome.
And you're a writer yourself. You've done quite a few books.
I've done 2 books.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I had no idea I would even write those, to be honest with you, because when I wasn't a very good student, and
Uh-huh.
back to being an artist, I just wanted to. It was almost a release. I have no
Yeah.
idea. It first just started off because, again, I was flying so much. I don't like to watch a lot of television or films on TV. I can't, or on the plane, because I can't hear them very well. So I
Right.
just started writing a book. It's called the Model Bible. It's truly to help young female models protect themselves in the industry.
Uh-huh.
When I was younger, I did modeling, and I grew up in the fashion industry with my family members. But I
Uh-huh.
realized even when I was younger in my teens modeling, and then my daughter went on to become a young model, I noticed a lot of people being taken advantage of, especially parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then a
Mm-hmm.
lot of books were like, hey, you want to be like Heidi Klum, read about it, Tyra Banks. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, none of these girls understand that they're probably most likely not going to do that. But there are
Right.
other avenues that they can take
Mm-hmm.
besides just modeling. So I wrote that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I
Mm-hmm.
really got good feedback on that. Thank God, because I had a really good editor. And then I just decided again to write another book. That was
Mm-hmm.
Wingman, and that's just to help men find the woman or women of their dreams, even if
Mm-hmm.
they've been through a bad breakup or divorce, roughly. But it was really just to help men build confidence, and it was kind of a bio on what I went through my entire life, growing up in the nightclub business, then ending up in the vending business, and then
Mm-hmm.
making
Mm-hmm.
films and doing all these things. So yeah, I did that. I too was sick of writing screenplays that weren't like movies, and my television, they weren't getting made, my scripts,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unless I made them.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to dive into reality because I was doing for 20 years nothing realistic, really. I mean, I would incorporate what I knew into my screenplays.
Mm-hmm.
I would put reality with, not reality. But when it came to my books, it was just a nice refresher, even in between writing screenplays and then afterwards, to say, oh my God, I can just be myself on this. I didn't have to create all these characters, all these different storylines, think about a budget, think about actors who would play it, all these
Mm-hmm.
things. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What
yeah,
would you say is your number one passion right now?
my passion right now, I think, is to help men master their self-confidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that would be because that's what people keep coming to me for.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fine line between being arrogant and self-confidence. And I think a lot of people don't even have self-confidence to come to me to ask me about it. But a lot of people with self-confidence are the ones who are asking me about it, like entrepreneurs. And I'm like, dude, you run a multi-million-dollar company, or you have this, or you're in all these things. But, we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Sure.
But I think when it comes to me, it's the I don't give a fuck type thing. I'd hate to say it. Like, you're going to basically get the truth out of me almost 99% of the time. If I'm creating a YouTube video, I'm going to create it the way I want to create it. If you're going to see my podcast and I want to put a picture of you behind me, I want to
Mm-hmm.
do it that way. If I want to
Mm-hmm.
do it in audio, I'll do it that way. If I
Mm-hmm.
want to do a YouTube video on a restaurant, then the next day do it on fitness. And the next day you may see me, at a consignment store, like a Goodwill store, like doing a video.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I do whatever I want to do, kind of whenever I want to do it with who I want to do it with. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where I'm at.
How does that work for you in relationships?
It's good. My first marriage, I was with my ex-wife a long time, but I think she had to deal with a lot. And then I
Mm-hmm.
burnt her out, especially making films. I burnt
Mm-hmm.
myself out.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think I'm very open-minded, and I'm a lot to handle, I think, with creating. So if,
Mm-hmm.
my girlfriend Rhea Lukes, I've lived with her a while now, a
Mm-hmm.
long time, and she has a lot of patience to deal with my craziness. But I'm also very patient when it comes to someone else, though, too, because I understand that how hard it is to deal with someone like me, because I see my father, who's very creative too,
Mm-hmm.
with many different things,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother too, and I see a lot of my personalities with both of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm also, when I travel, you get a break from me, and I need breaks. I don't know if it's from being an only child. I think a lot of people when they're only
Mm-hmm.
children, they either
Yeah.
want a lot of attention or they kind of want to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
I work in both ways. I'm very extroverted and introverted. I work both ways. So when people think, the number one thing they ask my girlfriend all the time, how do you deal with Rich? And I think she laughs. She's like, I'm probably a lot easier than most men because I really just go to the gym, and then I'd like to go to malls hypothetically, or I like to make I create whatever I create, but I kind of like having fun. I'm more really about the fun aspect of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that
Mm-hmm.
helps. How are you in a relationship?
Oh, God. Oh, man. Why don't you should probably also interview my exes and
Get
find out
those
about
guys
that.
on here.
Yeah. Yep. You will have stories for days. I'm sure you.
Well, you got that mystery aspect to you that I would think a lot of dudes that, you know what I mean, has got to be very interesting. You're like, I don't know, like you're an angel figure or something. You don't know where I noticed that's one thing I did want to bring up. So you had witch on one of your shirts, right? Are you involved? Like, do you follow any of that witchcraft stuff or, all that? Or is that just something, is that just something you were wearing that day?
I'm sure it was just something I was wearing that day as a joke, but in
Yeah.
general, yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm into rituals and ceremony and all of those kinds of things, and I'm interested in constantly, voraciously learning. So whether you want to call it witchcraft or just spiritual or whatever it is, I mean, certainly, yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah. All right. Because I don't know. I grew up in a Catholic household, but I'm very open-minded because when I went to Catholic high school, even we had to learn about other religions. And I love that aspect of it. And I have so many different friends that some are atheists and then some are Buddhists, some are, Catholics, Lutherans, Muslims. I love different people's perspective on religion as long as nobody's hurting each other, right? I love that aspect
Oh,
about it.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah.
It's funny how we've all followed different things and we have different beliefs. It's hard. I realize from a religious standpoint, I'm not structured to follow anyone or anything. It's just me. That does not mean I don't believe in God. I just can't follow other people's rules. I have a problem with that. That doesn't mean that I'm not open-minded to say, hey, I don't care if you're straight, gay, whatever religion you are. I really look at someone and say, I get why this works for you. Right. I really do.
Yeah.
I get your,
Yeah. No,
so.
I love when people have, alternative beliefs, and I often interact with many, many different people, many different walks of life for those different perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be in the arts,
Yeah.
when I made my first film back in '99 or whatever, I lived in Chicago at the time. I was getting a lot of people from Second City and Improv Olympic and all this. And I loved meeting all different types of people from all different nationalities because I grew up really more in an Italian, and that's mainly what I hung out with. I was in and out of a lot of bars throughout my life, but I didn't necessarily hang out with a lot of different types of people.
Right.
When you start doing creative endeavors and you need other people, it's the most enjoyable thing that you can ever go through, I think, in your life. But people don't realize that. You kind of want to shut out who's not like you to a certain degree, but you don't realize how you may not have the same religion, right? But all these other things you have so much in common with.
Absolutely. And it's also the way in which someone holds and hosts their relationship with their religion too. It's just if someone is open to dialogue, then that can be a really beautiful thing to engage in and just learn someone else's way of being.
Yeah, for sure. One of my closest friends became obsessively religious right before I was about to shoot my first film, and he had a role in it. And then eventually, there was a bunch of us that were always together. And then he decided that he wasn't down with our lifestyle anymore, which at that point in time, I can understand it between drinking and gambling and a lot of stuff we were drinking, like just our lifestyle in general, collecting money and everything we did. I got it. Right. And then when he kind of left, a lot of friends, I'm not saying turned on him, they were very upset with him. Right. And I was kind of brokenhearted too, because it's hard to lose one of your best friends, especially when you do everything together, even working together, traveling together, and we grew up together. But I kind of got it. Because my mother worked for the archdiocese, and a lot of people would come into, they come in and out of at different times of their lives. One moment they're a diehard Christian, and the next minute they kind of they leave, then they come back.
Right.
And then, right, let's call it for what it is. They kind of, and I looked at him and said, well, maybe he'll be back. Maybe he won't. But I saw his point of view, and we're still all good friends with him, but we're kind of distant from him.
Mm-hmm.
But if he comes to town or goes to dinner, or if he comes to town, we go to dinner and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of learn about yourself when people kind of break away from you for different reasons, especially when it's religious. Because I think a lot of people, they fall into certain religions and they either push you out or they want to pull you in. And if you don't come in, then they're mad at you. You know what I mean? Like it goes back and forth. So I get it. But a lot of times they want to bring you in because they want to save you. And that's a very nice thing. And if you say, I don't want to be bothered, then they're offended. And then they don't want to be a part of your lifestyle. And you say, no, come back with us. We're doing whatever we're doing. No, I can't because you guys are this. So anyways, I don't even know how we got on that. Oh my goodness. How long is your hair? How long did you say it was?
Oh God, I said 40 feet.
I know.
It's very long, very long.
Do you do all your own hair, makeup, and everything for your videos I noticed on YouTube?
Oh yes, I do not let anybody touch me in that regard.
Yeah, you look like one of those for sure. I don't mean that in a bad way. That's actually a good way. Yeah. I noticed though when when I was checking you out, and I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but when you go on there, some is under your last name, right? And then others are under your full name and then I think you even have, is that a band name? Like Nostalgia, right? You'll have that. And then you'll have your whole name, right? Cassandra Nostalgia on another one. And
that might be other people uploading. If it's Cassandra Nostalgia, it's just other people uploading. Yeah. When I do it, it's just Nostalgia. It's just, Nostalgia.
Is that your band name, the two of you and your partner, or is that just you solo?
It's us together, and I use that name solo too, but it's just the two of us. We're a duo. We do everything together.
And that's that one dude I saw in your pictures, right?
Yes, Roy Gnan, yeah.
Wow.
He's a badass. He's an incredible musician and just incredible. We produce everything together. We mix everything together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to connect you with Sheena if you would. She's an unbelievable musician out of LA. And Laura, she went back to Kansas City, so she's not there. But I think she would really dig you. I think you'd really dig her. I'm not just saying that because she's actually from China originally. And, I think, and she's in another band right now as well. What the hell are they called? I just did a podcast where she'll kick my ass. Holy shit, I'm horrible. When you do these things, you got to remember so many things. I'm just not that great with memorization, but she's with another band right now. What is her band called? I definitely think you two would really hit it off. And I'm going to wrap it up here. I think you're very inspirational, honestly, on so many levels. You're doing things that you're amazing at what you're doing. I think you're so true to yourself, your brand, your just everything you do, and you do it independently. And I think that's amazing in itself, especially in a place like LA. And I'm not just saying that because that's the place where you go not to be independent a lot of times. Am I wrong?
It's true. Well, I'm in the forest of Topanga Canyon, so maybe that makes a difference.
Maybe that does make a big difference. So, yeah, for sure. All right, that's all I got. Do you want to have it where anybody could reach you or anything? Do you want to tell them or what you're coaching or anything?
Sure, they can always find. So for my music, it's www.nostalgiamusic.com. So NOSTALGHIA music.com. And then for my business coaching, it's www.CassandranOstalghia. So CISCANDRANOSTALGHIA.com/mastermind program.
Awesome. Yeah. There you go. The mystery lady. I love that you didn't come. You put your face on this one. This is legendary. Who's that one girl who covers her face like this? You only see her nose. Who's that girl? Who's that musician? You know what I'm talking about?
They'll have to. Oh, who are you talking
She's
about?
got that bob cut, but it goes hair, and I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
Sia.
see. I don't. God, I've been out of the music game for so long. I mean,
She's pretty badass.
is she good?
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
Yeah, she seems pretty cool. She's another one like you. You know what I mean? You guys are
Mm-hmm.
very unique individuals there.
Mm.
All right, my dear. It was great
Okay.
talking to you.
Lovely speaking with you.
Yeah, and if I ever go to LA, we got to hook up. Maybe I'll bring
For
some
sure.
artists that I don't. My cousin Christian Pasquale, he's been a musician his whole life, downtown LA scene as well. He travels all over the world. He's a
Amazing.
guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
He does that. I don't know, not rockabilly, but I don't want to screw him up either. He writes his own music, and he's a writer as well. And I think he would really go crazy for you as far as everything that you do. And I'm gonna hit you up with them to connect because I really think they would love you. And then when I do a podcast, obviously I'm gonna share it, and they're gonna listen to it. So.
Wonderful.
All righty. All right. It was wonderful talking to you.
You too. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.